I'm DaJuan Johnson. Welcome to the Think Bigger Actors podcast, where I share with you different kinds of talks and coachings and conversations with actors and industry professionals on thinking bigger. I hope these conversations will help you on your path to success, because I believe success is an inside job that starts with your mindset and the thoughts you hold dominant in your mind. Change your thoughts and you change your world. Your path to thinking bigger begins now. Welcome back to the Think Bigger Actors podcast. I'm your host, DaJuan Johnson, and I am so excited to bring you another special episode of the Think Bigger Actors podcast from the Think Bigger Actors Retreat. Yes. I've already told you that I recorded day one, the full day one of the retreat. I recorded all of it for you. So you get to hear, the showrunner, which is so fantastic. This is Tom Bernardo's episode. And the last episode, you got to hear Kara Shoot Rosenbaum. Wasn't that fantastic? And of course, I know it's not all of it, but this is so good. I can't even tell you how amazing this talk was. We did with Tom Bernardo. We did a part of the podcast that was not recorded for all the VIP guests of the retreat, and that lasted about 30 minutes, and it was fire. I wish I had like a fire effect, be like, so you can hear like how excited I am, like a fire effect. It was fire. 5 minutes into our VIP talk, I was kicking myself for not recording that part also, just so I could have it for me to go back to, or maybe even sneak you a little preview of that. But then I guess it wouldn't be VIP. I guess it wouldn't be all VIP and stuff. So, but not to worry, when we turned the cameras on and started recording, we got so much good stuff. And I think you're going to love this listen to, to this showrunner talk about everything from auditioning, relationships, and knowing your lines. Oh my God, he talks about knowing your lines, and it's so good. I'll just say this about knowing your lines. I knew this about Tom. I knew this about my time when we worked together. I know how he feels about knowing your lines, but I wanted you to hear it from an actual showrunner, somebody who is on set, who is seeing actors' audition tapes over and over and over again. And this talk... Man, this is probably one of my best talks. I got to just say that. The part about knowing your lines is really important, because there are so many people out there telling actors they do not have to know their lines. Well, listen up, because Tom goes all in here. And let me tell you, he gets really upset about it. Really upset about, the things out there that the coaches or teachers or, people are saying about not knowing your lines. And it's so important when you're on set and you've booked it. I have a whole class that I taught about using a teleprompter. And I had so many actors that were so upset about me, calling me an amateur because I talked about your first call and using a teleprompter. Well, one of the things that I also said is you must have something in place to make sure by that callback, by that, test or whatever it is, that when you get to set, you must still know your lines. This isn't a substitute. But when we do those first calls, and if you don't have enough time for it, I absolutely think you can use a teleprompter. And if you would like me to make a free guide or PDF with my teleprompter information on it, why don't you hit me up at info@thinkbiggercoaching.com, and let me know, just say, yeah, I think your teleprompter, guide or situation will be amazing, because I think we need to make this part easier on us. Take the stress off of yourself. Yeah, right? Take the stress off yourself for that. Okay, I digress. We're supposed to be talking about Tom. How did I get here, y'all? Hey, you know what? Wait a minute. I just realized you might not know who Tom Bernardo is. Besides being one of the best humans I know, he is a writer, producer, showrunner. He exec produced on Bosch, the flagship, that one I was on, and he became a showrunner on Bosch Legacy. You can check him out on IMDb. I almost messed that up. But you can check him out on IMDb for more info on his past credits and stuff like that. And I think you're gonna love this. So make sure you stick around for the D12 shot at the end, where I bring it all together. Tom Bernardo.
DJ.
How are you?
I'm doing well. It's exciting to be here, man. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, thank you for coming.
You know, I'm honored.
Do I owe you? Like
you owe me big time. The tab is running.
It is
Trust
running.
me.
It is running. I really brought you here because I have a bone to pick with you. And I'm
as usual. This is a good place to take that up.
This is a good place while we're in private. While we're in private, I want to go ahead and get this. And we'll start the podcast this way.
Okay.
Tom, you once said on set in front of everybody that I was cinematically bankrupt. Literally said that I was cinematically bankrupt in front of all of my friends, and I've never lived it down.
Have you done anything about it? You were shamed in front of everyone, and yet you have not repented or anything. No, that's good. Yeah.
Let me just tell you guys.
Well, can you give them some context so they don't just think I'm this abusive writer-producer?
All right. Let me just say this, you all. You all pick a side, okay? And I'm going to tell you you're with me all weekend, okay? Yeah. So we were on set, and they were talking, Titus, I can't remember, there was somebody else there. They were talking about Spartacus. And at the time when we started this show, about 2014, 2015, 2016, somewhere in there, when we started the show, I was young. I wanted to be included in the conversation. They were talking about Spartacus, and I had watched Spartacus the night before. And so I chimed in, and I was like, I love that show. I saw it on TV last night. And it was like a record skipped in the... It was like... And they look at his face. He's still not happy about it.
Well, but this is as usual. You're this is revisionist history.
Right.
You're selectively telling the story. It had come on the heels of a number of interactions where we'd say, "Oh, have you seen The Godfather? The Godfather. Have you seen Casablanca?" This is like movie 101.
Has anybody seen The Godfather?
But you.
Okay. But I see.
But we're dealing with DaJuan right now. I guess I have to see that. We weren't even doing any like in the weeds cinema stuff. So at some point I was just like, dude, you're like cinematically illiterate. You are cinematically bankrupt. So I hope you've done something about it. It looks like it doesn't, but bone has been picked.
It was so funny because at that point they would start to say stuff like Citizen Kane, and I would just be like, yeah. Really good.
Yeah.
I loved it. I would just say
some of your best acting, actually.
I would just be
when you're faking your way through those conversations.
And I was like, I gotta go. Like, Tom, I'm so excited you're here, and we're gonna get into this. And I have some such fond memories of our time on set. Period. One of the things that let's just start here. One of the things that you said to me on Bosch was that like you loved Pierce. You loved Pierce, the character I played, because he kind of came up in the ranks like you did. What did that mean? Or am I revisionist?
No, that's no. I think I associate Pierce so much really with your own story as well. Yeah. You're somebody who showed up in the pilot as uniform
number
officer,
1 or 2,
number one,
number 1,
and which is already a big deal to get that part. Yeah. And it was in a scene with the number 1. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't even know how many lines. I can vividly see the scene, so I don't know. It could have been 4 or 5 lines, and you were the patrol officer who had responded to a call in where a dead body had been found, and suddenly the homicide detective, who's the center of the entire show, is in a scene with this cop, and that uniformed police officer number 1 can go by after he's served his role. Yeah. And if the series gets picked up and suddenly you're in episode 2, 3, and you're in Hollywood Station, but if that guy who becomes that cop is good, and he shows up and he plays well with others, and he is really good with that number 1. Suddenly you're like, we got to bring back another patrol. Well, who is that guy who was the uniform? He was good. He was like, he knew his lines. We've watched this a million times in editing, and he acquitted himself really well. So let's bring him back again. Sooner or later, we get to season 3, and we're bringing in the great Paul Calderone, who's one of the gifts to American films in the last 30 years. Great New York actor. He's been in a million things. If his name doesn't come to mind right now, as soon as you see him, you'll be like, oh, he's one of that guys.
He's been on the pod. He's on the podcast.
Oh, good. He's a real gift. I love Paul, just as a person. Yeah. And we were bringing him on the show as this kind of seasoned detective who was going to be an adversary of Bosch's in some ways, because Bosch was going to be under suspicion that year for something. And we thought there'd be this great dynamic if he had, just as a foil, but also the energy, if he had a young detective teamed up with him. Yeah. And I remember being in the room saying, well, who's going to be? Is it creates this person, create that person? And we all had said, what about Pierce? And when that happened, we were like, oh, that'll be perfect. And it was, because your dynamic with Paul behind the scenes somehow translated to on screen because of just you looking up to him and how he's sort of, you guys became friends, and as a mentor, there was something in that chemistry that was very real. But it's all a long-winded way of saying watching the person who was uniform number one become Pierce, who's suddenly a person who's carrying his own storyline or carrying scenes and becomes a fixture in that little nucleus of characters, is that journey, you know? And I guess the question was sort of like, my own journey was sort of similar. I was like, started out as a PA in season one.
Though, that I love you talking about me, though.
Oh, yeah.
So,
and I knew that was the subtext of the question, actually.
I literally just want to...
I'm going to ask you a question about you.
Go ahead.
I picked up on the cue. I said yes, and I played it. I went with it.
It's going to match my freak.
Yeah. But I sort of really identified with that character, and with you, I just felt like we had similar journeys, you know, because it's improbable that somebody who is a PA would somehow become a showrunner of the spinoff. It's not, and trust me when I say that, I'm very proud of the work I've done and what I bring to the table, but so many things have to really, that are out of your control, have to play in your favor for that to happen. So I'm extraordinarily sort of blessed in that regard. I'm so glad that it worked out that way, but I never would have dawned on me that was even possible back then.
I also want to say, Tom, there's also a lot of things that are in your control, though, that you did do. Like, it's not like you showed up and they just gave it and gifted it to you.
Absolutely
I want to be clear that you did work. You were there tirelessly, like, all the time. So I'm not gonna let you know.
No, thank you.
You know what I mean? You were like, we were always, where's Tom? When anybody had a question, you knew the answer. You were there for everything.
Thank you for saying that. And for better or worse, I've given my life to this show. I really have. I mean, it's like, it is everything for me. And there is an unhealthy sort of life work balance, but it is one of those things, like, if you, I mean, I love it so much and what I get out of it, and it feels purposeful. It sort of gives you those things that you dream of in terms of what you want your life to be about. It comes with a lot of headaches and a lot of challenges and a lot of frustrations and all the hours and all the egos and everything else. But it is one of those jobs where you say, okay, I feel this is purposeful. Yeah. I feel like this maybe brings meaning or delight or entertainment to people. That's a really nice combination to say, this is what I do for a living, you know, because I've had other jobs where that's not the case, but that's what you want. So you give yourself to that, and it multiplies in terms of the fruit of it.
I love that. So a lot of actors really have a hard time with understanding what exactly a showrunner does. So can we just break that down? What does a showrunner do? What does an EP do? Because you did EP before you became a showrunner, right?
I became an executive producer when I became a showrunner. Okay. I was a co-EP. Break
that down for us.
Okay. Well, as a showrunner, you're the head creative in terms of you are in charge of all the writing and generating the story ideas and building the story. Now, I co-show ran this with Eric Overmeyer, so I was lucky to do that with him. He's my mentor. I came up and I was apprenticed under him during all of Bosch. So everything I've learned about production and running a room and et cetera has all been under him. But it all starts with, months before we even go into filming, the writer's room opens. And the writer's room is really, and forgive me for those of you who know this, but I'll for those of you who don't, I'll sort of, when we talk about breaking story and being in a writer's room, it really is just a conference room. And then there's a table, and we all sit around this table, and behind us is all these cork boards, and we put up there all the cards that represent different scenes, and scenes become acts, and acts become episodes, and we are building episode 1 to episode 10. And we have a serialized show, which means that it's not episodic in terms of things being resolved within one episode, and then there are plenty of shows that are like that, and they're great. Ours, we have an element of that, but it's more serialized, where we tell these long-running stories from A to Z over many episodes. So as a showrunner, you are breaking story with your fellow writers, and there may be 5 or 6 of us, and we do this for months on end, hours at a time. It's sort of a sequestered jury type of thing, where we sit in there, and it happens, and it's always nerve-wracking. I don't know how much you want me to get into this, but now running it, I look at all that blank space, and I'm like, oh, that all has to get filled at some point.
Yeah.
And you're only going to do it brick by brick, scene by scene. But it is, when I look up there and I'm like, okay, we've got episode 4 that's being outlined right now. How the hell are we going to get to 10? Yeah. And some of this is, we've been benefited from Michael Connelly's books, because there's underlying material on which the series is based, but we're adapting that. Those are 2 different animals, a book in this medium of storytelling. But first and foremost, that's your job.
Right. Okay.
Is to generate that stuff. And you're overseeing all of that. It's the breaking of story, which is the generating and the brainstorming of ideas, building the episodes with your writers, assigning the episodes to be written by which writer in what order, overseeing and managing the outlining of that, overseeing and managing the writing of it. Once they turn in, you give them their schedule of drafts, and then you sit down and we go through, and there's rewrites. And that's all. There's a lot of plates spinning, because
so literally running
that aspect of it. And then that extends, once production starts, to going out on scouts for locations, taking a director out to a location and talking through how the scene is going to be filmed, having a number of different meetings with a number of different department heads on choosing everything from what color belt the character will have in the scene to eventually starting to get into the editing room and sculpting the episode in post-production, which has been a whole nother skill set. Right. They talk about, things being written 3 times, and you write it, and then it's written again when it's filmed and performed, and then it's written again when you can sculpt it in post. That has been a huge education. Yeah. And I really enjoy that part of it too.
I was just thinking, like, when I shadowed, I was like, wow, it goes down to like the extras and like what cars they're going to put it, like the directors and all where you guys were in all those meetings, and we got in all those vans, and we went to scout, different locations and stuff like that. It was it's seeing how the sausage was made.
For sure
on that part. Where do the showrunner? So every show has a showrunner, of course. Does every part that gets booked from an actor standpoint, every actor that comes up, does the showrunner have to approve that?
Showrunner is often picking it. Okay, and the network also is going to approve that selection.
Give me a hierarchy. So not hierarchy, but like, how does that go? Is it like casting directors? Submit?
We have the great casting director, Vicki Thomas. So she's already she's extraordinary, and she is somebody. Her and her team have enhanced, because she has a great eye. We'll have discussions. I mean, she's somebody who's casting Quentin's films, and she goes back to the 90s, and like, you look at her resume and what films she's cast. So I trust her talent and her instinct when I say to her, I think this is what the part is about. I think this is the kind of story we're going to tell with this character. These are the references I might have in mind. And then she says, okay, let me think about that.
So you're, just so we know, right, you're showrunner talking to Vicki.
Yes, exactly.
So you're talking directly to casting, like, this is some of the ideas. Then they're taking that away to say, like, ooh, I have Tiffany Shannon. I have
exactly, and they come back with who the selects are, and most of the time it's like we can pick somebody. It depends on the role, it's of course, but we are usually getting to casting, and something I have to oversee with our assistants is, okay, what are the parts that we have to cast for this episode? And it's a list outside of our regulars, right? So it may be somebody who only has a line because they're going to give this cop a warrant, or this is a person who's going to be walking through the crime scene with this character, or this is somebody who's going to be in episodes 2, 4, and 6. Right. Those are things I need to know. Because our other executive producer, who's sort of in charge of scheduling, logistics, and the money, and he's also collaborating. We're collaborating together with Vicki to make sure that she understands and has everything she needs as we go. And we have a big show in terms of the number of parts and where we are in LA, out in the world, and how many different people, and we want it to look and feel like LA. Yeah. So I hope that answers it. But it ultimately, the tapes come in. Yeah. I really wish it was in person. That's just my preference.
Why is that? Right?
To me, I love the live interaction you can have with actor, and you can see what choice he brought into the room, and then we can adjust it.
Yeah.
And then maybe we can go again.
You can see what they brought in the magic, and then I can tell them that's wrong.
Exactly. That was the subtext. Yeah.
And then I can just say no.
Yeah.
No, but that's
no,
good.
but
So
you
the
can
energy.
play.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, I
went in
there's
with Laura. Like I went into the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was that like? Do you remember what it was like that first?
I remember all of it.
Yeah.
I remember it was. I remember where it was in like Pasadena or
Oh,
that
wow.
area or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
I remember waiting for a long time. I remember going in there and it was a small room. I remember a lot of it.
And you knew it was going to be with the number one.
I did not know that.
Oh, the pages really.
I did not know. So here's the thing about. Well, we're good. We're like, listen, Tom and I have had many talks. We haven't had this talk. You know, one of the things that happened on that shoot when we were up at the Hollywood sign, and Pierce comes in, uniform officer number one. From my side of it, what I was like, I had done a lot of like airport man number two, or I'd come in, caveman, and I'd be like, would you like some fries with that? And I was like, I don't want to do this if I can't get a name. Is there any way they could give me a name?
Yeah.
And they came back with Rondell Pierce, and I was like, they're effing with me. Whose name is Rondell? I'd never met a Rondell before.
Yeah.
I had never.
Yeah.
And so from my end, and then I was like, great, I'll go in there and do this. And this is all, again, one-sided. He hasn't heard this before. And so when I got there with it, I was not sure of, quote unquote, the hierarchy and all that stuff. I'd already booked a couple of things before that, but I was just acting. And I was like, I'm going to go in there. I booked this show. I'm going to do my best. And there's this guy. And I didn't know the Titus. I didn't know billing. I didn't know number ones and stuff like that.
It's probably a blessing that you didn't.
It didn't,
know.
right.
Yeah.
I didn't know any of that. And
Would have locked you up, maybe.
Maybe. But I was like, I'm just going to do this the best of my ability, like I was in acting class and this was the thing and I was going to do the whole thing.
Yeah.
And Titus said to me as we left, he was like, I said, thank you so much. It was great. I had a great time with you and all that stuff. He's like, we'll be seeing more of you.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's what Titus said to me up on the Hollywood. This guy who was young, and I was like, yeah. I was like, yeah, sure, because I had been on General Hospital, and I was said I was going to recur on that, and I had never, so I was a little bit jaded about people saying you would come back.
Yeah.
I didn't know any of that stuff, and so when they invited me to the Soho House for the screening of episode 1 or the pilot, and Mike, maybe his name was there like a guy that was first season? Anyway, somebody they had said. Your footage was such a pleasure to cut.
Oh, wow.
That's what they said. And Mike, and they were said, and it was like, and I was like, well, if you need a cop, and they were like, we'll be seeing more of you.
Yeah.
And I was like, God, and they meant it.
Yeah, no, Titus means it.
Titus,
He doesn't he's so great. We can talk about him, of course. But I've seen that.
He's a different number one.
We're really, really blessed. He was a character actor for so long. He's comes out of the theater. Yeah. He studied under David Mamet, and he's really, I've watched it time and time again. Yeah. He is as generous with somebody who comes in for one line as he is jazzed by Paul Calderon being there. And of course he has this great rapport, but he's a real actor's actor in that way. Yeah. So when he said that, and trust me, I've had other instances, it doesn't happen in things like this we cast, where it's just where Titus is like, I mean, he's very generous with the person, but it's like, I don't think we're going to bring that back because it didn't work, or the story's not going there, and the chemistry wasn't there. Yeah. But most of the times, if it works, it's at that instance, which is amazing. So I know Titus well enough where when he says we'll be seeing you, he means it. And when we go to him, he'll say, well, what about the guy who played Rondell?
I've never seen anyone
who embodied a Rondell.
Like a Rondell. That's what
we need a good Rondell.
I didn't know. Like, I didn't honestly. And I think some of that naivete is good, right? Because I didn't know Michael Conley. Yeah. Like, I didn't know how big this was. I was just really going in there to serve this scene and do my best.
Which is the best thing you can do.
All I was, I was going to do. And, Titus and Paul and you guys became really amazing mentors for me as that guy who was green and who just wanted to learn. And I think as I grew up, I was like the set young guy, but I'm not young, but you guys really, I would say, for that. But where were we in this podcast? How did it get back to me? I love it.
I know. I'm noticing a trend in the pattern here. Every question eventually goes back
Bigger
to
Actors Podcast by DaJuan.
Yeah.
About
I think we were talking about showrunners,
Okay.
what they do. I hope that answered it.
It
It's
does.
like
It
it
does.
really is a job where you have to wear a lot of different hats because you're also in this management position now. You're required to be a leader at times and try to motivate people and work
Yeah.
with different people. And I watched that very closely because you're going to be working with your writers. You're going to be working with an editor. You're going to be working with the person who's what needs an answer today about this prop, about this graphic. Need to go out to this location to check out this thing out with the art director. Those are all different personalities, and they all have different jobs, and they all have different things that they need from you for them to go forward. So that's a
So can I pull it back a little bit? Let me pull it back a little bit more further. So when you're looking at selects or when you're looking at what Vicky has brought you, like what is some of that stuff? Like let's say she brings you 3 to 5 people for recurring this. You said there's going to be this episode 3, 5, and whatever they brought. Like what are some of the things that make these people stand out? I imagine by the time Vicky's bringing you selects, they're all pretty awesome. Right, you're getting 5 awesome takes on it.
Yeah,
you know, and like, what are some of the things that we as actors can walk away with thinking like, well, because I thought I did a great job on that audition, you know, but all 5 of us thought we did a great job on that. Is there something there?
I'm going to preface this all by saying, I would imagine this is what you're about to hear is maybe the tough part about it. Sometimes it's just a feel.
Yeah.
It really is. As soon as this person comes up, I have an idea about who this character is. Now, sometimes they can surprise you, bring a whole nother thing, so you want to be open to that. But oftentimes it's a tone, and it's how that person holds the frame and the way they are, the intent behind, they got the scene.
Yeah.
It may be short, but they got it, and they're executing that idea. So, and I know, okay, I have confidence this person can do it on the day. You look at what other work they've done. The other part that I think may be tough, because I can't imagine what it's like to have to self-tape and to do it time and time again, and to feel like you're just putting it out into the world and you have no idea. But I could talk about Denise Sanchez, who's now Reina Vasquez, who is, okay, so we have 3 major characters on Bosch. There's obviously Harry Bosch. There is Mimi Rogers as Honey Chandler. She was a once sort of adversary of Bosch's, and she's a lawyer and now kind of an uneasy ally at times. And then we have Harry's daughter, played by the great Madison Lintz. Now, Maddie, she plays Maddie Bosch.
That's a partner.
That character became a cop. And we wanted to team her with, you know, her Paul Calderon. You know what I mean? Like somebody who's just different in terms of tone, personality, everything, history, etc. Well, when we were finally getting the reads for that, I saw Denise, and what I loved about her was the scene was about her and Maddie responding to a domestic dispute, and a fight breaks out. And Denise is performing this by herself.
Yeah.
She threw herself on the ground and rolled around and acted it out. And I'm like, I love this. You know, she didn't have to do that.
Right, and you could see this in frame.
I could see this in frame.
Right.
And she didn't quite have a police uniform, but she wore something that kind of was supposed to be that. So I got a sense of like her buy-in immediately.
Right.
And one, she was terrific. Like she was in terms of look and age and all that stuff. And she had chops and she was really good. And but that I would always remembered that, because I was like, this is a person who will abandon herself to the imaginary circumstances of the story.
Yeah.
You know, and that moved me, because I was like, she's not only great and good, she believes it. And that's what you want, you know? We just wrote a big part for her in the 3rd season. She was only supposed to be, not only supposed to be, because she was so good as soon as she showed up, but you know, Maddie is the 3rd sort of this 3-hander. She's, you know, a big part of that. And Reina Vasquez is kind of like her mentor figure, a little bit, you know, her PO, or training officer rather, or TO. But she got so good that we had this whole storyline in season 3 that involved them responding to these sort of follow home robberies where people were being targeted because they were at affluent restaurants or coming and people follow them home, lock them in their driveway, the victims, and steal their wallets, their jewelry, everything. So this is happening in LA. We decided to do that. Now, how do you make that story more than just another crime that's happening in the world of your story? we're following these 3 people who are committing these crimes. They're all young kids in their 20s. And I remember waking up one day and saying, what if one of those guys was Vasquez's nephew? And I'm like, that's a story now. Because now I can see, well, we can play this out, break point of view, go into the world of these people who are committing these crimes, get to know them a little bit, then reveal that she's his aunt, and she doesn't know it, and he doesn't know she's onto them. Then play a turn where she figures it out. Then what is she going to do? Then she has to talk to Maddie about it. And then there's this is all gaining momentum because at some point she's got to confront him, and she either has to bring him down or not, and that's going to cause us a lot of great conflict in the family.
Yeah.
I remember, this is all on the DL, or I don't know, because I remember the network saying, and they loved Denise, but the network was like, we're hanging a lot on this story. Yeah. The subtext is, do you think she can do it? I was like, I have no doubt in my mind she's going to crush this. Yeah. And she crushed it. So when the episodes were coming in, I loved getting, and then we did have them call us and say, Denise is really good. I'm like, no shit, motherfucker. I knew like she was going to be good, you know? Yeah. But she just went even more. That same person who threw herself on the floor for the audition is now the person there having this breakdown. They didn't. I see it though. And I had no doubt. And we were all excited. I get excited right now just thinking about it because that story was fun. We invented it. Yeah. We found it. And she gave it life. Yeah. You know?
I love that. Denise is great, by the way. I met her on a commercial right before Bosch.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's neat.
When I was on Bosch Regular.
Bosch Regular.
She's phenomenal. She's absolutely phenomenal.
We got lightning in a bottle with that. Yeah. So we're very, very lucky.
So what did you guys take away from that? Throw yourself on the floor? Like really, really go into it?
I mean, wouldn't you think she's crazy? Just the other flip side of that? Because as actors, you try to figure out how far do I take it? Are they going to think I'm, not the same person?
I think wouldn't you think to yourself, let me go far and they think there's magic, then be reserved and not give it all. I think like when you have that opportunity to tape or to audition, and I want to hear what you have to say, like you want to leave it all on the floor. Sorry, that was a good pun. I mean, I didn't mean that one.
The title of your memoir. Leave it on the floor. Yeah.
I didn't mean that, but I mean, do you know what I mean? You don't want to think like, oh, I'll get a second chance. Or I'll get it. Let me show it because this obviously moved you and you're thinking about it. And so much so that we're thinking about, 3 seasons later, like I know this person can do it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I would say do that. Hey, actor. Are you constantly questioning what it takes to stand out in your self-tapes? Wondering if your backdrop's color really matters? Or should you or shouldn't you use props in your audition? Or maybe, what are casting directors really looking for in those first crucial 10 seconds? Hey, it's DaJuan, the self-tape guy, and I've got you covered. After surveying 800 actors in my self-tape challenge, I've compiled their top 10 questions into an exclusive playbook just for you. No more guesswork, no more uncertainty, and certainly no more stress. Get those answers you need to elevate your self-tapes at www.selftapeplaybook.com. I got equipment, I'll talk about props, wardrobe, and eye lines. I got you covered. It's high time for your self-tapes to stop being an obstacle to booking your dream role. Let's bring the joy of acting back into your life. Head on over to selftapeplaybook.com today, right now, so you can share in this success. I got another question real quick about, how actors sometimes come in to shows, maybe Bosch, they come in and they audition and they don't get it the first time. And then maybe 2 episodes later, they come in for another role and maybe like in the end of the season or another season. So you've maybe seen that one actor 2 or 3 or 4 times, their tape. What's behind that? Because obviously if they're being asked to tape, you might be seeing those or you're not.
And sometimes I'm saying, I want to bring this person back. He or she may not be right for this role because I think we want to go in this direction, but I like this person. They're not quite right for this, but let's keep. And Vicky will make a note of that, so we'll see them again. Yeah, and then eventually you're like, oh no, this now feels right. It's so much about the part. It's so much about the part and what that part is in the story. And by the time you're seeing people, you have that story is in your head. So you know what you want it to feel like and look like and be. you know, and we'll keep going. You know, sometimes that first round, it's like, these are good, but I think I need this. Now that I've seen this, I know now that I might be looking for this,
Right.
if that makes sense.
I joked about this many times. We talked about this on the podcast, and I should have Jason Kennedy, the casting director for NCIS, and but I had been in for that office and for those producers 30 times.
Wow.
Like, I had been penned for that show, I would say about 6 or 7
Yeah.
times. I booked it, but that's the end of the story. But I had been in that many times, and they kept coming in. It was like, "Hey, DaJuan," when we were going into the room at that point. And so, you know, I it's good to hear that from a showrunner's perspective. They're like, "Not yet, not yet."
Yeah.
You know, and then there was like a season they didn't call me in forever. And then I was like,
Yeah.
And then I was like, they hate me.
No, if you're a mindful showrunner, I don't want to speak too broadly here. You know it when you see something that's going to be in our story world.
Right.
It just might not be yet. So I'm like, I wrote. There's a good example of that happened in this past season. Somebody had auditioned for another part in season 1, and we really liked her, but it didn't align in terms of another project she had. And I kind of remember feeling like that jilted guy because she sort of said, I'm going this other route. And I remember thinking about it. I probably obsessed about it too much. I'm like, what? I wonder how that other job worked and all this other stuff. I mean, I instead of letting it go, you know, but I really liked her. And it came back around where in this season, she auditioned for another role and she was better for this role than that one. So I was sort of kind of everything worked out for the best, but it was another example of it just sort of worked out when she came back around. We're like, oh, she's better for this, and she was terrific. Yeah. So I hope that's not too vague, but just gives you a sense because I don't want to give away names.
That happened with, Jacqueline was my partner and friend, so I'm sure she doesn't mind me saying this, I think, but she auditioned for something early on in Bosch and then came back, and I think we saw her in season 5. Like, she had said that.
And then had a more of a run, really, for 5, 6, and 7.
Yes.
The other one, I think, only would have been, interestingly enough, you never know how it's going to go. It would have been a shorter role only for one season.
Right. So, I mean, we talked about that for that. You know, we're about at the end of this, but there was a conversation that we had on set that I think is really important for actors to hear. It was, you know,
you're cinematically bankrupt.
Oh God! Not everybody's seen Godfather 1, 2, and 3.
I guess you say so, pal.
Okay, and so we had this conversation where you kind of came to me. This is, I think, in your supervising days, right? Where you came to me and you said he knew I was a coach and knew I was working with actors, and he had said to me, "Whoever's out there telling actors they don't need to know their lines, please make sure you tell actors they do need to know their lines."
Yeah.
And would you remember that a little bit?
I totally do. I know it
your
seems,
face is so intense.
No, because I still take that very seriously.
Yeah.
It seems so obvious.
Yeah.
But we've had people who show up and don't know their lines, and they're in a scene with Titus. I don't even care if you're not in a scene with Titus.
Yeah.
Like, it is your job. And I don't know where this comes from, because I don't want to pinpoint it to it's a certain generation, whatever. It's really about the integrity that you bring to your job. But you're showing up, you're on the show. Like, I'm not saying this is like we're the Sopranos. It doesn't matter. Yeah. It's your job.
Yep.
You've gotten the part. You booked it. And you're showing up and you don't know your lines.
Yeah.
And this is now one scene we have to shoot. We have 4 to do today. And now I have a frustrated director. I have a scene that may or not work even when we cut it together because you're giving nothing to our other actor. We're wasting time.
Yeah, no,
and to be honest with you, I'm getting like my blood's boiling just thinking about it because it's so much about the story.
Yeah.
And the story is everything. And when you don't bring yourself to it in whatever capacity, but most importantly, as this person who's embodying this part, you've given up on this thing. Mm-hmm. You're not serving it. Yeah. It's like, what are we doing? Mm-hmm. What are we doing if you're not serving that thing? Because that's the only thing that's going to light a fire to keep you going. You know, like if you're showing up for 2 lines or if you're there at midnight on a Tuesday trying to get a cut ready to show the network.
Yeah.
You know, everything is about that. Or go home. There's plenty of other things to do in life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And so it's one of those things that I think actors have been told, not all actors, but like I've been told, make it fresh when you get to set. It's okay, you can riff a little bit. And I was like, I don't remember Titus and them riffing. I think we got to know our stuff, you know. And it was one of those things that I never played with because I always felt that I felt so grateful to, you know, how I came up on that show. And it was just like, I was going to know my stuff. And I had a rule that I was like, you will not be held back because of me. That was never going to be my thing. I don't care if anybody else, the lights or somebody else in the scene, I'm going to know my shit and we're going to keep moving. And I think that lended itself.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I do want to qualify one thing. Like, if the culture of the show is, hey, when we get there, know your lines, but we're going to create a little bit, then that's that show.
That's not Bosch.
That's not Bosch. But it also presupposes that you still show up knowing your lines, and then you can do whatever you know happens. Whatever. Like, let's be open to what may happen on the day, depending on what your culture is. But know your effing lines. Yeah. You know.
Yeah. Can I have
Hit
fun
your
Tom
mark
back? Can I have fun Tom back?
Yeah, please. I went to another place there.
Tom, I'm looking at the little twinkle in your eye just turned off.
Yeah.
Wait, has this happened a lot? I know it happened. I remember it happened when we were in Bosch, and I was an actor. I was like, he's not coming back. Like,
oh yeah,
it's just you started to see that was like, this isn't.
And sometimes it's sad because it's somebody who might be. They know their lines, but it's just not working that day, you know. And
I remember that.
And people are in different stages of their career, and this is what they know how to do, but that muscle is struggling, you know. And you want to be compassionate about that. That's different, though. That's a different set of professionalism than not knowing your lines.
Yeah, that's a totally
and not
different.
Knowing how to hit your mark. Yeah, you know. Mm-hmm.
No, but let's delineate those two things because I think that is different than, you know, showing up and just trying to wing it or being a. Yeah. Like a lot happened that episode I shadowed where we had to reshoot a whole new scene and recast. Do you remember that?
That's right.
Yeah. I won't say the thing, but you remember that.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing it up.
Oh, no, look at him. We had to recast that. And I got lucky that when I was shadowing there, I got to see that and I got to see the sweat. And one of the things that I think we don't understand as actors, and I always try to remind everybody, is this is a job. Mm-hmm. Like, these people, we're one spoke in this wheel. They are literally, I remember Patrick used to have times, I got to be done with this scene by this time to get to this next thing. But we're up there because this is the first thing we booked in a long time and we want to fucking act. And they're like, good Lord, can we just get on with this? I got 75 more scenes. We got to move the company. Yeah. We got a company move. Is that about right? We got a company move, and you guys are like, you don't know your stuff. And it's like, just keep it moving. I think the best thing you can do on set is ask your showrunner, your co-executive producer, how do you say utilities? A lot.
Please know how to pronounce that. Yeah.
I couldn't say it. I don't know what that day was. This is like season 6, season 7.
Yeah.
He loved me by then. Like, I was like, is it utilities or is it utilities? I just wasn't something.
I think we still have to ADR that line.
Did we?
Yeah.
I feel like too far. I feel like too much. Those are family secrets.
I know.
Family secrets.
It's air the dirty laundry. Yeah, I do want to add too is if someone shows up and they're good, you're like, that's a person we can bring back.
Yeah.
It's reliable,
right?
You know, and they have to do this one thing and they do it well. Yeah. So I know that person, and all of a sudden they get more, and get more, and then and it goes back like seasons. Yeah. You know, like we need somebody who works in a pawn shop. Well, what about her? She was great, and back in season 4, we haven't seen her in a few seasons. I think the fans would like to see her, and we did that. You know.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Tom, so much. You know, as you land this plane, Tom, before I got a couple questions here. You're not boring me. I'm gonna look at my phone. That's where the questions are. But as we land this plane with this, when you think of just looking at all the good actors out there, looking at the actors that are new that you guys have given chances to, because I really do think that Bosch, like we talked about, really opened so many doors for me. Like, you know, I was just telling Tom in the back that I booked this Disney show, and when I got to set, the people were like, Bosch.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? And they were like, I hear it so often.
That's great.
Like in Chicago or at LAX, people they don't just say hi. You know what they yell?
Pierce or man purse?
They yell either Merce or they yell across the way, Young Blood.
Wow.
I'm like in Whole Foods, randomly getting my, okay.
Oh, that's great.
So I want to say thank you for
my God.
Proxy and all that. I think all of you all really championed me, and that was like part of my career that I think it boosted it and catapulted it.
So nice to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being there with us.
Yes,
you know.
When you're thinking about that for actors or anything like that, is there something that like my audience out there that's listening, the people who are in this room that are listening, can take away for other than just be good? Is it just really dive into the story? Is it really transform yourself and throw onto the floor, like you're saying? What can we take away as you're looking for from your eyes as a showrunner besides good acting? Because that means the same. You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah, of course, and sometimes that's so subjective, right? Mm-hmm. But obviously the basics we talked about in terms of learning your lines. What I like to see, whether it's on the day or in an audition, is can this person surprise me, and it's not about drawing attention to the choice. They zigged when I thought I wrote it a certain way and everyone else is zagging, and I'm like going with the zag as I think I need the zag, and all of a sudden this other person does this thing and you're like, oh, that's different, that's better. Yeah. And she made that choice. Mm-hmm. And that's bold and it's kind of brave, because you're like, I bet you everyone's kind of going to go over here. I think I want to play it this way. Yeah. This just feels right to me. So suddenly I have a sense of her as an actor and as a creative and as a person, because they took this chance. Yeah. Because the safe thing might have been in this direction. So that stays out, and that makes somebody pop a little bit.
I love that. I love that. One of the things I translate that as when I'm talking about in Think Bigger Coaching, I think we've taken our artistry as actors out of play. And what we've done is we've tried to I'm thinking, what does Tom want me to do here? Mm-hmm. What does this paper say? And so one of the things that I ask, is, ask yourself, what do I want to do here? Mm-hmm. What do I think about this? Not going crazy, like when it says roll on the floor again, sing or something like that. Mm-hmm. But what's your take on it? Mm-hmm. Because when the synergy, like you're saying, the zag instead of the zig, when that pops and you're still doing the scene, it could be magic. It
totally is. It's the thing that moves me that we were talking about sort of earlier with respect to being at that monitor, and it's unbelievable, really, what acting is doing in terms of creating this reality that we turn off so much of ourselves to participate in or to experience. Yeah. And it's bringing something about a story to another person's mind and their heart. Yeah. I mean, that's incredible, actually, when you think about it. That's why I love what we do.
You think I'm incredible?
I guess we'll bring it full circle.
I mean, I think we should. As I.
Yeah. So you're saying like that.
So you're saying.
No, but that's a fun part of it, is seeing somebody bring a choice that is really smart and different, and it's kind of fun. It's exciting. It's all a long-winded way of saying, where's the play in this? Yeah. I'm
going to read a couple questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
As I read a couple questions, can you tell everybody how amazing the cookies were?
Why don't you give them some context so you can appear even more shameless?
I actually just want to hear it from your perspective. So one of the things that I used to do, and we've talked about this now that I've propped it, I was actually just buying time as I look at this thing.
Oh, do you want me to buy you some time?
Yes,
is that my cue? I missed it.
Okay. As I look at the questions, so I'm not reading really.
Writer's Room opens up a couple of months before we start production, start filming. Yes. Yeah, you know the date. This is like a stalker. I'm sort of... and so we're in there every day. You get lunch, you get coffee, you have your rhythms, and you're seeing the same people. You start to get pissed off and all that. I mean, you get all these things that are going through. So it's always like a treat when something happens. Like you get a gift from outside, like the network sends something. Or a shameless actor who wants more screen time.
Not what I wanted.
Sends cookies. And we all have like sweet tooth. So they weren't just cookies. They had cookies with like his face on them. And pictures of like him in different scenes. And we were so sort of out of it. We're like, oh, this is great. We're going to bring him back for more.
Stop it.
So it hit the mark.
These cookies it was just a break in case of emergency type thing, and I was just being nice. But let me tell you something, he's joking, but I missed a year.
And where are you now? So I'm gonna
Gosh,
say,
I miss you, Tom.
Yeah,
Man, that was don't miss a year is what I heard there.
Got a little cocky.
Got a little cocky.
Yeah.
I was like, I got this. We're in
like,
season.
yeah.
And then,
We
where
talked
is-
about it. We're like, where the fuck are the cookies? This guy's starting to take us for granted.
For granted,
Like
like-
any relationship.
Like
You
any
get
relationship,
resentful.
I'm like, I don't
you
get
know?
a cookie anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Screw you, man. I'm breaking up.
I got a question here. When actors, just one of the actors in the room have asked, what is the best way for actors to, I guess, approach you or have a relationship with showrunners? By the way, Tom's not on anything that looks like social media. Tom is literally like, I have to text him. And
Just a choice.
I think it, like you said, it's a choice. But I also think Tom works a lot. Like, you know what I mean? He's
Mm-hmm.
really protective of that space and time. You know what I mean? Also, but he does get back to me. I don't want to paint it that way.
Yeah.
But what's that best way for actors to, you know?
I always love when
Do you
they
guys
have
have
a
like a
question.
like a showrunner?
Yeah, no,
like,
yeah, cookies, exactly. What I appreciate is I like taking calls when it's a question about the script or about a line. And that goes from Titus. Like Titus to this day, he'll text me or when he's prepping and we'll have phone conversations about lines. And I have a great example of something we came up with that was better than what we had written. But I like when I try to have that sort of open door policy because oftentimes an actor is sort of at sea and they're making their choices in a vacuum, which is part of the job. But oftentimes they can benefit from having a little bit more context.
Yeah.
So I would invite that conversation. You know when you have to draw the line because you're like, okay, I only have so many hours in the day, and I hope this has been helpful, et cetera. But that's not the case. But it's like that's setting it up to my assistant and saying, this actor has some questions about this. I'm more than happy to take that because to me, it's all going to lend itself to telling story better because that person can then come in with better preparation and better choices, et cetera. So I hope that answers your question.
That's good. It's good. We have time for maybe one or two more questions from the audience if you wanted to. If anybody had a question they wanted to ask, I know some people jumped in. If not, I'll look for someone. We'll say thank you to Tom. What do you got? Anybody out there want to ask a question? Go ahead, Jen.
I am curious about, and maybe I missed this earlier, the journey from PA to showrunner.
I would like to get it on recording too for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, season 1 of Bosch and the original series, or the regular series, as DaJuan put it, I was lucky enough to get this PA position, and they knew that I wanted to be a writer. I sort of made that I was taking the job to get as close as I could to the process, which as a PA on that show, you're doing all the things that is required of the job, but you're also in the writer's room, you're sort of fly on the wall. But that was my first time in a room and seeing people break story and seeing these minds go to work. I felt lost a lot of the time. I really felt like they were speaking this different language, and I was constantly trying to catch up. But once I started getting into it a little bit in my own head, I would start to anticipate certain things, and it was always like affirming when I had an idea. I would never pitch it, of course. I kept it to myself, and suddenly a writer a minute or so into it would say, well, we could do this. I'm like, oh, I thought of that. So I felt like maybe I'm onto something. I don't know how to catch up to all this, but I'll figure it out. And then I was lucky enough where the show got a pickup for a second season, and I remember getting that call, we'd like to bump you up to staff writer. So that was a big deal, and I was lucky enough to get that first season. I co-wrote 3 episodes, and a lot of that was, I thought I would just get 1, and it was so much by circumstance I got the other 2 because it was like really like they needed bodies to throw at the machine. Like we needed a draft, and the staff writer can at least get us this, and we can work on it. So it was a lot about necessity at that point. But I was learning so much, and the show kept getting picked up, and I was lucky enough to keep getting called back. And each season, as I was saying this before, they would ask a little bit more of you. Like by the time I got to the 3rd season, it was, we need you out on set. You're going to be our eyes and ears on set. Now, I didn't know how to do that job. You kind of learn it. By the time I got to 5th, 6th, 7th season where I was growing as a producer, then I was like, okay, I can tone this episode. I know how to do it. I know how to have a conversation out about performance because in the off season, I would go to Larry Moss's and I would sort of audit those actors' workshops because I needed to learn the language of it. I needed to learn how to assess a performance and then talk to a director about what we need because I know the story. I've been breaking it with our writers for several months, and I know the whole and like tracking that emotionally. Doing all those things, I had to learn all of that. So I was lucky that as I was doing it, it was my sort of film school. learning about coverage, learning about framing, learning about the lighting, learning about how to answer questions from what people are doing and who does what and how to best serve them so that they can do their job and serve the story. So by the time I got to the end of season 7, we found out we were going to do this spinoff. Again, it was one of these things where you sort of fell ass backwards. They're like, we want you to run this show. And at that point I felt, I mean, it's so scary to do that, but I felt I was prepared to at least jump in. And I wasn't doing it alone. You know, I'm still running it with Eric, who's a seasoned hand. And if we get a season 4, we'll do it again.
We'll get a season 4.
You know,
come on. I mean,
we
got a lot of spinoffs.
We'll see. I hope that answers your question. Thank you for asking it.
Tom, I'm going to just say, I love you, man.
Oh,
I think you're so great. And, you know, I asked Tom, I said, Tom, will you come do this? And it was like he was waiting by the phone because it came back so fast. He was like, absolutely.
No,
and that
thank
meant
you.
a lot to me because I think you're just great, man.
I really appreciate that. I love what you're about as a person and what you're doing here, and you made this a reality.
Yeah.
So when I thought about the spirit of this, you're like, this is what you say yes to.
No.
You know what I mean? Because this thing doesn't become a reality unless a lot of people say yes, starting with you. You know, saying yes to, I think I want to do this. How do I make this a reality? So I feel very honored to be part of it. I hope it was fruitful for people, you know.
Was it fruitful? Was it? See, Tom likes
cookies and applause.
Well, thank you very much, Tom Bernardo. Let's give a hand. I told you it was going to be good. I told you. I mean, I know nobody likes for anybody to say I told you so, but I told you this talk. I hope you took so many notes. I hope you will join me at the next Think Bigger Actors Retreat because, first of all, I be bringing people in. I go through my Rolodex and I'm like, who do you want to bring in? Because this was fire. This talk itself was just so amazing. This one really hit home for me again and again and again. Tom B, I don't know if he likes it if I call him that, but I'm going to call him that. Tom Bernardo said something that I can't shake, and it's all about showing up prepared and knowing your craft. He literally said this. It's about the integrity that you bring to your job. Are you kidding me? I don't even know if I need to go on with the D12 shot. It's about the integrity that you bring to your job. You know, in an industry that sometimes feels chaotic, where you feel like you possibly one line away from success or failure, what stood out to me the most was Tom's insistence on being ready for your moment. And I can't believe how many actors don't know their lines. But he wasn't just talking about memorizing your lines. He was talking about respecting the story, showing up fully prepared to embody the role. That's where the magic happens. And that is dedication. That dedication opens doors. I wasn't going to play around when my opportunity came to be opposite Titus or opposite number 1 or opposite anybody. I got on a show. You did not see me playing around. I knew my stuff. I came in there ready. I made some choices and bam, 7 years later. Which is very, very, very similar to Tom's journey from a PA to a showrunner. That's living proof that hard work, preparedness, and embracing every opportunity, how it truly makes a difference. It's about going beyond the surface. Show up, do the work every single time. Not just when you feel like it, every single time. What Tom said about actors needing to surprise him stuck with me too. He doesn't want the safe choice. This doesn't mean you have to do that bold choice thing, but he doesn't want the safe choice. He wants the one who zigs when everyone else is zagging. That's the mark of someone who's just not playing it safe, but who's fully invested in their craft, invested in what they're doing. So don't go in there in your next audition jumping on one foot. That's not what he's saying. That's not what he's saying. Be more invested in your craft. That's my D12 shot for this episode. Always show up fully prepared, ready to surprise with your choices, with you fully in it. Be the person who throws himself on the floor. If that's what the scene needs, if that's what the audition calls for, be fearless. I want to just say thank you, Tom, for reminding me and this entire Think Bigger tribe to play big. We have to give it our all every single time. We might not always know when our next opportunity will come, but we better be ready when it does. So here's my reminder to you. Don't quit. Don't get out of line. Keep pushing, keep surprising, and keep growing with every opportunity that comes your way. This is a long journey, y'all. This is a long journey, and you got to be ready to give it everything you've got, even when the odds don't seem possible. So I want to just say how I always sign off. Hold the vision and not the circumstance. And I am rooting so big for you. I love you so big. And I thank you so much for joining me for this special edition of the podcast. Please let me know what you think. Let me know what you think on the socials, at Think Bigger Coaching on Instagram and on the TikTok. And I'll see you for our next one.